Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Today we look at the drill rapper who achieved fame with a song called County Lines but was in court earlier this year and who has since been jailed but now released for his role in County Lines drug dealing in Guildford. Theo Beckford, 20, who is known as Frosty, was one of 5 people sentenced at Guildford Crown Court for their involvement in selling heroin and cocaine to more than 90 people in and around Guildford town centre. In the dock alongside him were Farshad Ibrahimi, a 24-year-old semi-professional footballer, Lucia Zaccarini, 23, Lee Jones, 54, and Preeti Patel, 45, who at the time was working at the neighbouring Guildford County Court. Prosecutor Wendy Carty told the court that the group had been involved in a county line style operation, using Miss Patel's Bridge Street flat as a base from which to sell heroin and cocaine that had been brought down from London. In the track Frosty, released online in January 2019 while still on remand, Mr. Beckford, of no fixed abode, raps about drug dealing and murder and refers to undercover police watching the house from which he sells drugs. This appears to be what happened in reality. Miss Cotti told the court Surrey police officers had been carrying out surveillance on Miss Patel's flat since July 2018 before raiding the property in October. During that time, they observed Mr. Ibrahimi of Cranbrook Lane, Arnos Drive, and Mr. Beckford entering and leaving the flat repeatedly. On a number of occasions, they saw 2 men, and on one occasion Miss Patel supplying local drug dealers nearby, including outside the town's Electric Theatre and in Bedford Road car park, just yards from the county court where Miss Patel worked and opposite the Crown Court where the group was sentenced. When police raided Miss Patel's flat at around 4 PM on October the 3rd, officers found Mr. Ibrahimi and Mr. Beckford and Miss Zaccarini and Mr. Jones. Earlier the same day, they had returned from a trip to London to pick up more drugs, Miss Coty said, and were surrounded by around £7,000 worth of heroin and cocaine. Some was in wraps ready to sell, others still requiring packaging. Miss Patel was arrested at the county court later that day. Miss Coty said, "Immediately the police came and Mr. Beckford said all the drugs were his and said to Mr. Ibrahimi in a quiet voice, 'Say no comment and I will take the rap for this.' The Crown say that was perhaps a notable act, but it was clear it wasn't just him. Analysis of phones found in the flat and forensic evidence found on the drugs revealed the real story," she explained. Mr. Ibrahimi had been the ringleader, although the operation was ultimately run by persons unknown, probably in London. He had dreamed of playing professional football, his barrister Abigail Penny told the court, and had his trials with the Leyton Orient, QPR and Tottenham Hotspur. However, injury had dashed his hopes, and he spiraled into unemployment and mental health problems at the time he became involved in the drug dealing. Mr. Ibrahimi had been a man responsible for sending almost all of the texts advertising drugs to local users, Miss Coty said, using a phone line known as Luca or Ghost Line. Mr. Beckford, despite some of the lyrics of his County Line song, had played a lesser role, mostly in selling the drugs, but also in sending at least 2 of the texts from the Ghost Line. Unlike Mr. Ibrahimi, he had 1 previous conviction for a drug offence. In mitigation, Mr. Beckford's barrister, John Swain, told the court he had become determined to turn his life around, after seeing he could gain success through his music. Despite having no promotion, his song has been watched on YouTube 2 million times, played on Radio 1 Extra and brought offers of music deals from several record labels. This has really given him something to look forward to, Mr. Swain said. He wants to put this life completely behind him and learn from his mistakes. He has not done so far, but he wants to assure the court that he will. Miss Zaccarini and Miss Patel, described by a probationary officer as a functioning heroin addict despite her 20-year addiction, and still played lesser roles. Mr. Jones, another addict and seemingly a customer of the group, appears to have only been responsible for driving them back from London shortly before Miss Patel's flat was raided on October the 3rd. Mr. Ibrahimi and Mr. Beckford pleaded guilty to conspiring to supply heroin and cocaine and to possession of heroin and cocaine with intent to supply. Passing sentence, Judge Rufus Taylor said it was a great shame that Mr. Ibrahimi had found himself in court and that he had lowered his possible sentence due to Mr. Ibrahimi's problems with mental health and homelessness. Judge Taylor sentenced Mr. Ibrahimi to 3 years and 6 months in prison, reduced from 4 years and 6 months on account of his guilty plea. Regarding Mr. Beckford, Judge Taylor said there was a lot to be said for the defendant, given the submissions from Mr. Swain, but warned him that due to his previous convictions, he would face a sentence of 7 years if he found himself in court for the same crimes again. He sentenced Mr. Beckford to 2 years and 8 months in prison, reduced from 4 years on account of his guilty plea and full confession during his police interview. Turning to Miss Zaccarini of Armour Close, Islington, who pleaded guilty to being concerned in making offers to supply cocaine and heroin, he said he was giving her a chance. "You have got to take this chance as a warning to stop," he told her, passing a sentence of 2 years, suspended for 2 years, and requiring her to do 200 hours of unpaid work. He described Miss Patel's involvement as a personal disaster for her, saying, "You have been a functioning addict for 20 years and it has finally caught up with you. The Crown has been charitable in allowing you to plead for this rather than the conspiracy." Miss Patel had pleaded guilty to allowing premises to be used for the supply of heroin and cocaine and received a 9-month sentence, suspended for 18 months. Finally, Mr. Jones, who had pleaded guilty to a single count of acquiring criminal property, namely a quantity of money, received a conditional discharge, which will be in place for 18 months. So what are your thoughts about the crimes committed by Mr. Beckford, aka Frosty, Miss Zaccarini, Miss Patel, Mr. Jones and their primary leader Mr. Ibrahimi, who supplied users from in and around Guildford? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.